Welcome to Attack and Dethrone God with Uncaged. I'm Jessica Marcrum. I was the writing director for Uncaged Goddesses, and I am going to be your moderator. So let's start by introducing our panelists. Let's start with Gwen.
I'm Gwen Bassett. I'm the producer and art director, co-producer, co-art director, cover artist, some interior art of Uncaged Goddesses. I'm Gwen DB on the internet. My pronouns are she, her.
I forgot to say my pronouns. Those are also she, her. Elaine.
Hello, I'm Elaine. I am the illustrator for the Leviatar adventure. And I also did one of the spot art for the Leviatar adventure as well. My pronouns is she, her. I am at the art show, table 76, if you want to come by and get Leviatar prints. So yeah, thank you.
It's so good.
Grady.
Hi, yes, my name is Grady Wang. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the writer for the Lyra adventure, and she's the goddess of illusions and deception.
I like this double mic action you have going on, Grady.
And, Do you have
I'm
three
Garrett
mics,
Colón,
Grady?
Right? Too many mics? No. And I'm Garrett Colón, he, him. I wrote the Talona adventure and helped out a little bit here and there when other people need some help. So it's been great.
So yeah, let's start with an icebreaker. Everybody, what is your favorite D&D goddess? And why? So I'm gonna start with Garrett. Is it Talana or is it somebody else?
It's Kiputaito.
Oh,
Not even a
bless.
question. My big lobster lady, like, right? But no, I mean, like, I like a lot of the guys, but yeah, it's Kiputaito.
Elaine, what about you?
Obviously, the painting that I did the work for, Leviatar. But in all seriousness, actually Luthig, in the way that Jess at least wrote her, because she gets fed up and just leaves and just goes to lie down, and I can't kind of really identify with that energy. So.
Grady, what about you?
So I had several options, but then you actually were the one who introduced me to this goddess. Her name is Shar S.
I was almost so excited. Go on.
And she's the goddess of cats? I don't know. Yeah, like, her titles put, like, Daenerys Targaryen to shame. She is the mother of cats, the feline of felicity, the tawny temptress, and the succubus of sensation.
No, you can't have her Wikipedia article up.
Yeah,
That's
I don't
cheating.
know. I have it memorized.
She's my favorite. Gwen, do you have a favorite goddess?
I do. Thank you for asking. How long do I have the floor for? My favorite goddess is Shar. She is one of the primordial goddesses. She co-created the universe and everything in it, along with her twin sister Saloon. Depending on your interpretation of the lore, they might be the same goddess. Check out Uncaged Goddesses' Cat Evans adventure to learn more. But she is so highly disrespected in the lore. I am so mad about it. She's the goddess of, like, loss, pain, suffer, not pain, that's a different one. But she's the goddess of basically, her sister took the stars, and Shar gets the dark space in between everything. She's incredibly powerful, and yeah, right? And then the Forgotten Realms, the Forgotten Realms wiki opens with a quote from a hag that's just like, Shar can't hear us here. She's too busy writing sad poetry about how everyone likes her sister better. And everyone remembers that, and they don't remember all the cool stuff she did. She made like half the Pantheon by accident while she was fighting with her sister. Anyway, I've got a lot of opinions. Do you ever get so mad about Wizards of the Coast lore that you make a whole book about it? That's where I'm at. Thank you for asking.
Whereas I just want to lie down.
The two kinds of person.
All right. So that segues well into my next question, which was Gwen, why Uncaged Goddesses?
Well, so Uncaged Goddesses wasn't actually my idea. Ashley Warren was the creator of the Uncaged anthology, and she did the first 4 volumes. She basically put out a call into the universe. Hey, writers, who wants to help me make a 5e adventure anthology, taking some of the classic female monsters that we've come to know and love from the Monster Manual, and reimagine them to be a little more feminist, because a lot of the lore in the classic Wizards of the Coast Monster Manual sure does tend to be, this woman was so slighted by a man that she turned into a harpy about it, and now she's just so screechy. Isn't that awful? Don't you want to kill her? And so Ashley was like, hey, we can do better. And she also casually mentioned, there's a goddess, Umberly, whose official titles include the Sea Bitch and the Bitch Queen, which is super fun. And Ashley mentioned, that would be interesting to do some high-tier games for some of the goddesses. We'll do that when I'm done. And then she proceeded to, make 4 whole anthology books and go, I'm a little tired, understandably. So after all those books were done, I went to her and I said, hey, Ashley, you remember that book about goddesses? Can I do that? And she said, I won't stop you. And here we are.
So for Garrett, what prompted you to pitch for Uncaged, and especially for Talana?
So for Uncaged, it was one of those, I knew folks that had written on it before and heard great things about the writing environment and also, the cause for, the entire basis for Uncaged. And I originally was like, I'm not, femme presenting. It's not something I should really write for. But a couple of my friends were like, no, like you're still, as long as you're, doing feminist things, it's fine. Like go for it. And I did. And I went for Talona. So part of it was I was like, I don't know if a lot of other people are going to pick Talona because especially like Plague, right? Like in the middle of a pandemic, not so great. But I was like, well, she's still a goddess, and I want to like do right by her. And so I went for something that kept it Plague adjacent, right? Like it's a thing that's happening in the background, but don't worry about that. You're gonna fix it, and that's it, right? Went in a great place. So super happy that I was able to write it out.
What about you, Grady, with Lyra?
Yeah, so I pitched for Lyra partly just because I felt like she was very underrepresented. In fact, I think when
She doesn't even have art on the wiki.
Yeah.
well, I mean, she is constantly like illusioned in mist. So, but like yeah, when Gwen put out like a survey before the Uncaged announcement even happened for goddesses, like she was like, here's a poll of all like the neutral and evil aligned goddesses. Which ones have you heard of? And I checked Lyra because I thought you meant Lilira, the goddess of joy. And so that's how obscure Lyra is.
Yeah, the classic evil goddess of joy we all know and love.
I mean, yeah. So my pitch for Lyra was that instead of just being kind of one god, that she was actually a series or multiple mortal women who kind of passed along this mantle of a certain shared cause. And what the adventure kind of dove into was that, she's often opposed by champions of truth. There's a lot of people who think that, she's out there being like a trickster like Cyric, or somebody who actually Cyric, also like a god of murder, is also trying to steal her domain.
You know who else made Cyric? Char.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
And so it's kind of like this, like, why are you lying? What are you trying to hide? And as someone who's queer identifying, like, and kind of a minority who grew up in Indiana, actually, there's a certain amount of things that you kind of have to do sometimes to pass or to kind of be accepted in society, or you feel like you have to. There's that societal pressure there. And so I kind of wanted to dive into that, and how, sometimes your illusions and your deceptions can serve a greater good. Sometimes people do it to protect themselves or protect others or protect something that they care about, or to preserve something. And so a lot of that adventure kind of dove into every single Lyra did something that made her worthy of this spark of godhood. And then as each Lyra kind of ages and eventually dies, she finds another woman who has done something that she believes is valuable, but under this kind of deception, but through deception, and then passes that godhood and that power onto her. And that also helps with the lore, because the lore is a bit of a mess. She's been murdered multiple times and comes back, and nobody ever seems to ask why. And that's one possible explanation.
I love it. And for Elaine, looking at your art, Leviatar is not the first goddess who comes to mind. Especially in her art, canonical depiction is full of like skin hooks and scary things. So how did you feel when you were assigned Leviatar, and what prompted you to make her as absolutely badass in a completely different way that you did?
So I think this is a really good time to talk about project management, because like Gwen and David who's not here, he's in Canada, he's not dead. But he should be here with us, who kind of like gave us a survey of like which goddesses do you actually want to go with. And I don't think anybody picked Leviatar, because when we went to the wiki page, we saw the skin hooks and the male gazy kind of BDSM stuff. We were just like, nope. All right, we're just so I don't think anyone picked Leviathan, and then they asked, well, is there anybody? And they came out with Arnout's, who's the writer of the Leviathan adventure, and gave us a artistic brief. And he mentioned that Leviathan was kind of, he envisioned Leviathan as like an androgynous goddess in like a Rococo decadent mansion. And I was just like, yes. So, I mean, just by it's really by the strength of Arnout's brief that I volunteered for Leviathan. And it's like, it was just really credit to like his way of reimagining like the way that we see Leviathan, where she's not just like all about pain and like whipping people and stuff. And he kind of like really combines this kind of pleasure and pain into like a very robust adventure. And it talks about like, you know, going through like people's deepest desires and fears, and how do you reconcile that? Yeah.
Yeah, how was it working with Arnout on that? Was there like a lot of back and forth?
Oh, actually, no. I think he's basically the artist's dream to work with, because like there's some because my background is like in concept design for like industries and stuff like that. So they tend to like be really noodly. They kind of stand over you and tell like, I want this chair like over there. You know, so and you just become the hand. So like for working with Gwen and David and Arnout, it's like has been really refreshing, because they're just there to make the piece stronger. And Arnout was like really nice of like I gave him like thumbnails of different kinds of Leviathan dresses, and he said, I love all of them. Just go with whatever you want. So I just picked the fanciest one. So yeah, so he was very encouraging, very relaxed, kind of like allowing me to kind of execute the vision that he had, which is extremely generous of him. So it was an absolutely great experience to work with you guys.
That's awesome. And that brings me to Gwen, actually. So a lot of the art, the ENNIE-nominated art for Uncaged is in a similar style. So how did you choose this style for the book and go about implementing that from an art directing?
Well, we put out a call for artist portfolios after we had done all of our writer pitches, and we knew how many projects or how many adventures we were going to have, and therefore how many pieces of art we would need. And working backwards from that, we determined how many artists we would need. There are 21 adventures in the book. Each adventure needed minimum a full-page piece of art and 2 pieces of spot art, plus the rest of the book also needed art, the non-adventure parts of the book. So we ended up with a head count of, I believe, 31 artists. And then I put out a call for art portfolios and just said, hey, anyone who's interested in working on Uncaged Goddesses, send me your portfolio. And we received over 220. So that took a while. But fortunately, we had so many portfolios to go through that David and I sat down and decided, you know, what do we want the anthology to look like? Because we had the luxury of picking from really good artists whose styles complemented each other. They didn't all match, because that's not the point. This isn't a wizard's book where it's supposed to look like every single illustration could have been done by any of the illustrators. Mm-hmm. We wanted the anthology to look like a lot of people worked on it, because a lot of people worked on it, and that's part of the appeal of an anthology. So we were able to pick out, you know, there were some absolutely gorgeous comic style arts or even anime art that we were like, this is amazing. This is candy for my eyes. This does not fit my book, but I want it on my walls. And like, at the end of the day, when you're art directing a project, you do kind of have to make decisions like that and just say, this is gorgeous and not right for my project, and that's okay. So we were able to focus on bringing in people who trended in the direction of that painterly fantasy style art. There are still definitely some illustrators who branch out further because they were just too good. We couldn't not include them. For example, the artist who did Lyra. Alaire's art is definitely more comics focused. We actually sent Alaire a message and we're like, we love your art. It is only black and white. Can you do color? And she said yes, and we went, great, come in. Or Jong, who did the Talona art, worked in a very classic ukiyo-e kind of style, and we just went, oh, this is so good. We can't not publish this.
Big buff ladies.
Yeah, it's very good. But yeah, so that was our general goal, was to make sure that we had stylistic cohesion without homogeneity? I have a degree in English. I know words. Do you? I literally do. Isn't it weird how I'm here now on the art side of things, being like, don't talk to me about words?
Well, don't worry, I have a degree in psychology, so I don't know why I'm here.
That's the
I like
other
to
half
say
of my
I'm
degree.
a writer, not an editor. So, yeah.
Garrett, you just spoke up, so now I'm going to pick on you. You've written a lot for Adventures League.
Yeah.
How was writing for Uncaged different?
Oh, miles apart. So the biggest difference between like writing for something like this anthology and versus like organized play is the types of structures you have to pay attention to and what you're playing with and against, right? From both a what does the average player expect from an organized play session, right? From items to flow to power level, meta, like there's so many layers of things you need to pay attention to, and it's a very different structure. So if you ever do come from homebrew into an organized play, be it Pathfinder Society or Adventurers League, it's very rigid. There are a lot of places you can fiddle with and have your creativity kind of come through, but versus Uncaged, you have a lot more openness, but at the same time, you're also expecting a little bit more from the DM's or GM's perspective. So you're condensing, right? You're saying, all right, here's a lot of creativity, but I'm going to really hone it down and expect you to come in and add your flavor, your perspective, your ideas on top of what I'm presenting you. Whereas for organized play, you're like, I don't expect you to have the experience to sometimes do that, or B, have the time to really prep for that. So you're gonna layer, here's a lot more for you. And that was fun. It was just, again, right, it's just two very different writing styles. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I know Adventures League is very specific about like what kind of magic items and stuff you can have.
Yeah, and it's also like the difference of, so if you don't mind, so like talking about play testing, right? That's something we all had to do. Well, we did some play testing in-house, out-of-house. When you're play testing something for here, there's a lot more swinginess, right, in a homebrew campaign. You can't expect 6 level 20s with 30 magic items. They've all been playing together for 10 years. It could be, I'm running this one shot at a convention for 4 people that don't even know each other, all level 18, and just coming in and having a good time, right? That changes a lot of what you want to put into your encounters and into your roleplay situations, where you want to push some of what your theme is, but you don't want to be overbearing. And then with Adventurers League, or again, any other organized play, you have a lot more expectations on like the power creep, right? There's just a lot. So for me, coming from organized play into the homebrew realm, I had to actually, despite what they might say about what I wrote for my monsters, I actually had to tone it down a lot.
Your CR30
significantly.
stat blocks?
Yeah, my original Talona stat block was just rude, to be blunt. And I toned that back a lot because I had to remember for myself, like, I can expect the DM and the players to bring more creativity and fiddle with it a lot more than what I would do in other settings. So, yeah.
Grady, you are really into Pathfinder now, or so I have heard. And besides the different system, how is doing an Uncaged thing a little bit different than writing for an official Pathfinder adventure?
So I have not actually written an official Pathfinder
thought you were doing-
adventure.
Oh.
But that actually will tie into my answer, so that's helpful.
Okay, good.
But yeah, I promise I won't be that person, because I know there's been talk about that going around the internet recently, who's like, oh, if you're playing D&D, have you tried Pathfinder? But I will say that, yeah, like, I think writing for Uncaged was fun because, like, a lot of the lore behind the goddesses, one, wasn't great to begin with, but two, is also like often contradictory or just lacking because I know like the older editions maybe had a little bit more lore to them, but I know for 5th edition for sure, like Wizards doesn't really like to give you a lot of that because they want you to make it your own, and they like don't even like telling you like like with Eberron, right? Like what actually caused the mourning? Like they won't even tell you. And so like things like that, like for Pathfinder, that's very different. So they've had one in-world setting that they've been building chronologically and consistently through the entire history of the game. Like every adventure path is canon. There is a canonical ending for every one. There are tons and tons of like high-level, low-level NPCs. Like every country, every city, every region, like if you want to know who the governor is, who the major leaders are, like what all the different factions are, the religious factions, like if there's a civil war, who the political, like even like random people, like who your tattoo artist to go to in this city is and things like that. Like they'll often have that information. And so in some ways that can be, a little bit like intimidating because you're like, I have to work within this framework, but that's also not true. Like, especially if you're a GM, the understanding is still like, this information is here if you want it or if you need it, because you may be a newer GM and you may need a lot more about that. Or if you're a player and you don't even know how your character fits into this universe because you have no setting and no fiction to read, that can be very difficult. And so, there's still, the information is there if you want it, but you, as a player, you don't have to stick to it. And I think for Uncaged, coming back to this, was that it was just basically a blank slate. And so in some ways that was liberating because I could go in and say like, this goddess isn't even immortal. She's a bunch of different mortals because they split the immortal spark and some of the power got diluted, but they're still able to do some of the things they want to do and kind of dive into some of those themes. And so that was very liberating and very fun. But in other ways, it kind of gives you less to play off of because it's like, I don't know about y'all, but like, I don't know the difference between like Helm and Torm or like Cyric and Bale and whatever the other
Cyric and not Bale.
murder death gods are. Yeah, like.
Yeah. And that's a problem with so many of the goddesses. Telona's like, well, she did something with her sister back in the day. That's it. Yeah, she's this big, powerful god, but don't worry about it. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And so with Pathfinder, there is an entire source book, no mechanics, just about gods and like their followers and what the gods believe and what their personalities are. Every one of them has their own missions and likes and dislikes, and their followers have things they like to say. Like we have, and so like, and you can even use that. Like you don't even have to play Pathfinder. You can actually use that setting and play 5e, like I think Gwen does, because like Gwen in her actual play for Uncaged. Your god is Caden Kalian, the god of alcohol.
Yeah, my character was like, which god's afterlife sounds the most fun to go to? And I, knowing more Pathfinder gods than 5e gods at the time that we started the show, because I hadn't done goddesses yet, just went, Caden Kalian's a cool guy. He's just the god of like drinking and being drunk.
Yeah, and like we had a play at home where all the players like decided they agreed, and they were looking down. They're like, "Oh, you can say sweet barley brew," and in response to, and like that was just like a thing, like within 5 minutes, and actually slightly annoying. But like, and so like that, like so I would have loved to have that and be able to have played off some of the relationships. And in mine, I actually did. I picked 3 rivals gods for Lyra and had them all coming after her and trying to kind of dive into like their relationships. Why do they dislike each other beyond one of them being jealous of the other or something like that? Yeah. And how do their followers interact and where are their overlaps and where are their actual rivalries? And I think that's really fun, but that's kind of something where having more official lore can give you more to work with.
Yeah, jumping off that real quick, it very, very much depends on which 5e goddess you go for how much lore they have. For example, Tiamat, who Nina wrote the adventure for, hi Nina, has an awful lot of lore. We literally didn't get any pitches for the one eligible goddess, Akkadi, because her entire Forgotten Realms wiki page just is like, she's the neutral goddess of air, period. Related links, and you're just like, there's not much here for me to work with, huh? So it is very variable depending on the goddess, and understandably, an awful lot of them don't get a whole lot of screen time because for some reason they're just not as important to people, I guess.
Yep. Either that or you're diving into old like advanced D&D books,
Oh, yeah.
and that's also its own.
You're like, what does Tui have to say about my goddess?
Yep.
Nothing good, I'm sure.
No.
So speaking of goddesses, Gwen, why Joaquin for the cover and not, say, Shar?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, Shar is on the cover. Thank you very much. There she is. Second of all, you may notice Shar is not very high contrast. So honestly, the Joaquin decision was a little bit process of elimination. So
Please don't break my book.
I'm sorry. Joaquin was a little bit process of elimination. Like Grady said, we had a poll at the very beginning of this going, hey, which of these goddesses do you know? And the results we got back were that for some reason, people don't know a whole lot of the evil goddesses. So we had basically a list of 3 that everyone really knew, and they were Tiamat, and I was not painting a dragon. Lolth, whom if we put on the cover, everyone would go, that's a drow book. And that's not what we were going for. So unfortunately, Lolth was out. Also, we wanted to have fashion photography style things. And from the waist up, Lolth looks like a drow and nothing else going on. So, you'd miss out on all the spider fun. The last one was the Raven Queen, who canonically has no physical appearance. So then we had to move down to the next layer of people who were recognizable, but not the big name ones. And those were Umberlee and Joaquin at the time. Shar later somehow kept creeping up in the results after I had stopped looking at the poll. So she does now count. But at the time,
I think that was probably because you talked about Shar
Yes.
literally all the time. I think you did that.
I've been evangelizing her for 16 months. Me, I'm the change I want to see in the world. But ultimately, Umberlee was very fun, but also didn't translate well to a cover because she is made of water, and that makes her hard to read at a distance when you have like a thumbnail-sized person. Joaquin had the added bonus of being gold, which just generally is very striking, and I could really get weird with her design because officially her appearance is like a lady wearing fancy gold things, and I went, I can work with that. So I had a lot of fun with Joaquin. I also did see some like inspiration pictures of the like very filigreed kind of mask situation that turns into a crown, and I went, I want to draw one of those. So I put it on the cover. But yeah, I'm glad we picked her. I feel like our book was blessed by this goddess of commerce that we have in front of us. The book is doing well on DM's Guild. So it worked out.
When are we going to get the alt cover? Umberlee.
The alt cover is you flip it around.
So I guess for Elaine and Gwen, you mentioned the masks being an inspiration. Elaine, did you have any inspirations besides our Newt's adventure for your Leviathan art?
It was mostly because of the strength of his brief, basically. So he mentioned like Rococo decadence, and I just instantly went, yeah, I'm just gonna pull all the references from every Rococo like mansion that I can find and just incorporate that into my work. The dress particularly was like, how fancy and how many layers can I make her dress look? And I think at the end it was something like 3 or 4 layers on top of each other, and there's like a bunch of like ribbons and gold lace and all that stuff. So it was very, very much inspired by Rococo references. So yeah.
I love all the cakes in the background too. I
Oh,
just
yeah,
really
the
want to
cakes.
be at that party.
I have to talk about the cakes. I'm sorry.
They're important.
So the cakes took way too much time to finish. So my reference for those was actually Marie Antoinette, the movie. Mm-hmm. And they have like all these gorgeous like multi-tiered layered cakes, and it's just filled with like I don't even think it's meant for eating. It's just filled with cream, and there's like rosettes and all that stuff, and it's all that. It's ridiculous. So I kind of included that all into the background.
This is the art we're talking about.
You can buy a print of it downstairs.
And there is a particular, I don't, none of you can see this, but there's this one particular tiny cake in the background that took me.
You're in the front row.
That took me about like 2 hours to complete, and it absolutely did not deserve that kind of time, but I just love the Rococo look so much that, yeah, so there's a lot of detail in that one particular cake if you are so inclined to go look at it.
Which you can do at Elaine's booth. She's in the artist alley. I don't know if we've mentioned.
Oh yeah, I sell prints of Leviathan, so.
So Gwen, as project manager and co-project manager and co-art director, what was your favorite part of the whole thing? Do you recommend it?
Ooh,
Would you do it again?
Very different questions you have thrown at me. My favorite part was getting to work with so many people. I feel like that's kind of a cop-out answer, but like there were over 70 people involved in this book. Every single one of them was an absolute delight. And honestly, I feel like I made so many like new friends through working on this, and people I'm really excited to make more stuff with, which is always a wonderful feeling. I also really enjoy spreadsheets. So there was that. I would say, do I recommend it? Not alone, that's for sure. The very first thing I did, I said, hey, Ashley, can I make this book idea that you had? And she went, okay. And I went, great. And then immediately grabbed Jess and David and Lore and just went, help me make a book. I am not doing this alone. And I was correct. There probably should have been more people on the admin team, but we made it work. If anybody ends up wanting to make their own anthology, I am happy to talk more about the project management details. Find me on Twitter. But it is a lot more emailing than you ever want to do in your life. It is a lot more spreadsheets than most people want to do in their life. It is just so much checking in all the time, making timelines, making sure everyone's talking to each other, an awful lot of, proactively resolving communication issues and that kind of thing. So it's really good like a management experience if you want to do that with your life. But it's not a whole lot of like creative work. So I was like, I wish I did more creative work, and then was like, I can assign that to myself, which I would also recommend against. I forget your middle question. Did I like doing it? Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
What was your, oh yeah, you said your favorite part was meeting people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off that because, like, I was like, directly communicating with David and Gwen through the whole process, and like, what did I want to say? Shit, I forgot.
Not to toot my own horn, I do remember you saying that you liked the way that we art directed it.
Yeah, I mentioned.
I don't
that.
know if that's where you're going with that though.
No, it'll come back to me, I'm sure.
So for Garrett and Grady, what advice do you have for anybody designing a Tier 4 adventure? And is that different from your advice for DMing a Tier 4 adventure?
You want to go first? Or I can go first? If you insist. It is very different. They are two very different skill sets. DMing Tier 4 will help you know what feels good, but then writing Tier 4, you kind of have to throw some of that out because your preferences are so different than some others. Personally, in my opinion, the biggest thing you have to pay attention to is scope. It's a lot of writers just completely whiff their initial and go, well, this scope is cool, and it's like, no, go bigger. You didn't go big enough.
No, go smaller. You only have 3,500 words.
Well, it's big first, right? When you think of Tier 4, you want these big, grand moments, right? These big things where you're making a lot of change, right? When you're talking about Tier 1, it's local. Tier 2, it's like a regional thing. Tier 3 is a wide area, but it's not necessarily extraplanar. Tier 4, you're going to those sorts of things. So starting from that and then scaling down, right, to your word count, to your needs, it's something that takes practice. I mean, we had 3,500 words. As you can imagine, 3,500 words is not a lot. I'm used to 5,000, 8,000 words, and that's for lower tier stuff. So just, it's yeah. Yep.
The original Uncaged
It's so thick
writers
already.
got
It's not thick
3,000 words, so we very kindly gave you an extra 500 to
You're
make
welcome.
it Tier 4.
I wanted something I could like break things with. It could have been so much bigger.
I'm just gonna point out that drive-through claims that they can print up to like a 900-page book.
Claims. You've seen it, yeah. But no, it's, for me at least, it's pay attention to your scope because that's gonna dictate a lot of what you need to focus on. It's also story beats. Focus on your big core story beats, especially when you have such a small word count. Let the DM do all the small little, like give them little hooks, right? Like see little things like, oh, well, if you want to make this bigger, you know, here's a couple of side things that you can immediately kind of lean into and go off onto a side quest and then come right back into your main plot point. But yeah, you just, that's kind of where I would start with. And any big ones from you, Grady?
I want to suggest that perhaps scope and scale, you want opposites. You want the most scale possible, but
Yes.
the tiniest project scope possible.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, you can go bigger if you're not writing in an anthology.
Why would you do that if you're not writing for me personally and my goddesses book?
That means I'm invited to your next project then.
Yeah, that's all.
Sorry, I have to leave.
So I agree, but like, and this may be a little controversial, but my opinion for Tier 4 has always been, you can kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And like, if you're worried about killing the players or like messing them up, I would argue that if they are a level 20 character and they die or get stuck, it's pretty much their fault. And so, like, I mean, yes, playtesting is good. But it's also like, they have wish spells, they can teleport, they can plane shift. Like, you either have to do like what Dungeon of the Mad Mage did and be like, we're gonna disable some of these spells for you, or you have to kind of trust the GM and the players to an extent that either they're gonna stay on track or the GM's gonna be able to manage, you know, where they wanna go and what they wanna do. And so I think writing Tier 4 is a lot more general guidance because of that. And so you can kind of give the GM more things like, these are the themes, these are the stories, these are the major plot points that you want to get. These are the encounters that you probably want to hit somewhere, somehow, even if you have to ambush them because they ran off to a different plane of existence. And then kind of let the GM do that. Let the GM kind of tune some of the encounters as needed. If something's bogging them down, you know, trust that the GM can adjust it to get them through it, and then adjust the future encounters, because the variance in ability and power for a Tier 4 party is just so big that it's not really something you can account for very well anyway.
If I may, to actually piggyback on that. So 2 playtest groups I had one group that was 5 dwarf barbarians and their human fighter sugar daddy. And then
D&D.
the other group was 6 Sorladins, all kited out, and it was very wide. But I agree with a lot of Grady's saying. The one thing I would caution you on is don't throw the whole kitchen sink into your stat block. I am so sorry about Zazaluth.
The stat block that takes multiple pages, is that the one you're
Yeah, that's the
apologizing
one. I thought it was only 2 pages, and then they're like, oops, it's 2.5. I'm like, oh. Oh, but yeah, like that's the one area that I caution writers getting too zesty with are stat blocks, because yeah, the DM can adjust it, but sometimes when you're in the thick of things, you're like, oh, oops, I just kind of went with the flow with what the stat block has, and that was a bad time. But that's just something for me personally. I find that's not something people can ad hoc change as fast as like a narrative beat. So
It keeps going.
and that's the easier of the 2 fights you can have.
So I totally agree, and I actually think that having more focused monsters, and like if you're going to have a stat block with a bunch of different abilities, you may be better off splitting that into different creatures with the various, like one for utility, one for hitting, one for defense, and things like that. Partly because, and also because of just your action economy.
Yep. The only reason I did 1 creature was it's got its legendary actions and all of its reactions, and it's a mythic creature, so it's going to come back. And that is so complex, it's like 2 or 3 creatures in one. I did not want to be like Grady's saying, right? Like put 1 massive creature in there and then 5 other creatures you have to manage. Like you really need to split it up.
Yeah, and just because your players also have a tendency to just one-shot them, and so like. You want them to burn everything on one and then still have another one standing. And like for my adventure, I closed it out with what, according to like CR ratings, should have been a very difficult fight. And I knew it was not going to be a difficult fight. And so I provided some options, like side things that the GMs could do to make it more complicated or make it last longer if they wanted to. I know that when the Threeflings did it on their actual play, Jess kind of just ran it with those core creatures because otherwise it was going to get really out of hand. And Gwen one-shot my monster with a wish spell. So
Worth it.
it was worth it, though. Yeah,
It was a Tarrasque, and it ate me first.
Astral Dreadnought, but yes.
But
It's an astral dreadnought, but yeah.
Oh, sorry.
yeah, the only other thing I would say too on that note is, like for my adventure, right? When I came into Uncaged, I took a moment and went, okay, I've done some tier 4 writing before. I want to complement what other people are doing. So a lot of other groups did, a lot of other writers did, a lot of non-combat, a lot of roleplay, a lot of exploration. And I was like, okay, well, I know how to, make difficult things. I'll go and lean on that a bit more, but still try and provide that. Like, on a very contrasty note, like what happened with the Kyrian Sale adventure. There's not a lot of fighting there, especially if you're like, I'm gonna go pick a fight with Kyrian Sale in her domain. It just, no, it just doesn't work, right? So
She has no HP. She just has actions to hurt you.
Yeah, that's just it. Because you're in her domain, in her home on her domain where she is most powerful, and you're picking a fight with her. So like not everything has to be combat oriented. Mine happened to be because it just fit the theme and tone of what was going on, and it also fit a niche that the book needed because there were so many other great adventures in there that did stuff that 5e doesn't always see, and it was great. So
speaking of things players don't always see, it has been shown by Wizards, what they've released, that most campaigns and most players do not get to tier 4.
Ew.
So as folks who have all, I believe, played in now tier 4, what is your favorite thing about it? Elaine, go.
What? You're up.
Well, my favorite thing about tier 4, well, I get to, particularly for the Uncaged adventure, is like getting to see like the way that all these goddesses are reimagined in a way that they're not really, serving a male god, particularly for your Luthic adventure, where she's always playing second fiddle to. And so yeah, I mean, like at least for me, it was just like reading through all the adventures, not just experiencing it, just reading through it and kind of seeing the way that they are all kind of reimagined in a way that, because I'm Asian, so it's kind of like and a minority particularly, so it's really nice to kind of see the way that these women are not just more stronger, I guess. I hate to use that word, but like at least they're the main characters in their story and not like serving someone else. So it was great fun to at least play this book.
As a player, Elaine had such a thoughtful answer, and my answer is that when you look at the character class and you see the level 20 thing and you're like, that looks fun, it's sad to never get to use that. It's fun to hit level 20 and be like, I've earned this, and wild shape into a dragon because you can do that now. And just get to fully be like, this is my sandbox, I'm here to break things. And the DM is basically just like, yep, I can't stop you anymore. And that's a lot of fun. I also, kind of like Elaine said, I like that the stories can feel properly different. Obviously, there's a wealth of adventures available for 5e, but you do kind of start hitting the same stat blocks, the same scale of your adventure when you routinely stop at level 12. Beyond that, you get to get weirder with it. You get to go to the planes that would instantly kill another character, because you can't just wander into the plane of fire if you're not like resistant to that, and no level 6 character is going to be resistant to that. So it really opens up a lot of the weirder, more interesting stuff in the D&D universe for players to actually get to try out and visit for themselves instead of just reading about on the wiki and going like, dang, that'd be cool.
What about you, Grady?
I'm largely second Gwen's opinion, and also that I have a problem with being told no, and so when you're level 20, you can. Oh yeah, speaking of, that 3,500 word count I got around by basically using like 16 random roll tables to generate.
You're not supposed to brag about that to the project manager.
I'm already uninvited to your next project. But yeah, so I think just having those abilities, being able to play with it, like being able to fly, being able to teleport, being able to just do all those things and kind of feel like you're in a super like fantasy movie or a superhero or something like that. It can just be really fun and just a change of pace from having to kind of more navigate the puzzles that you have to more like just encountering things and And when a challenge does come up, right, it tends to be a lot more creative because the designer had to think around all of the various restrictions that you could do. And I think that's seeing something like that come together is really cool. And it's like seeing like, you know, the climax of a novel where all of these intricate plots got put together, but more from a design perspective. So I really like that.
What they all said. But in all seriousness, yeah, it's absolutely so for me, I find I get frustrated when some high stakes, high planar stuff gets stuffed into like level 10 adventures. I feel like they're just not done justice. Like everything has to be shrunk down or like mitigated to a point that they can beat it, and that's fine, right? But it's all the time. It's just nice to be like, no, here's your high level stuff. Like, here's it as it not necessarily should be, but like, here's it at its greatest moment, right? At its apex. So yeah, that's all.
We've got about 5 minutes for questions, if anybody has any.
What's up,
What's
Theo?
up, Theo?
What's up, Theo?
Goddess is 6.
I will say, Goddesses is the last Uncaged volume ever. Our future plans are fun stuff we're not ready to talk about yet, but don't involve the Uncaged anthology. We're going to leave this as the appropriate capstone for it. I think a 20th level book is a reasonable capstone for an adventure anthology. But yeah, Jess and I are up to some nonsense. Keep an eye out on Twitter.
And I know some of the other writers and editors and I believe artists have gotten together to work on the Undersea Adventures?
I know that's something that's going on. I'm not personally involved in that, but yes, that is something that I know some of the other writers and artists have pulled together for.
So let's talk about what all of you have coming down the pipeline. Garrett, you're talking. What do you have coming up that's exciting?
Redacted.
What a mood.
Yeah, and then some other stuff. Sorry.
Grady, what about you?
I have a lot of video editing to do after this panel. But yeah,
Where can we watch your videos?
So my partner Theo was the one taking tickets, and we
He also wrote the Libdol Ploop adventure in Uncaged Goddesses.
And yeah, so we have a YouTube review channel for like a lot of accessories and minis and adventures and things like that called The Gallant Goblin. And so we're on Twitter as @GallantGoblin if you want to find us. And we recently had a Kickstarter for these kobold plushies.
They're so cute.
Adorable.
There's a pre-order for it at koboldplush.com. You can get them in 7 different colors and classes. And we have a few extra accessory packs that's just because the final versions will have swappable like gear and stuff, and so you could like change out what they look like and things like that. Yes, so it started as a Pride Month shirt design that we used as a fundraiser for GLSEN, which was for safe schools, and then we eventually branched from there. And then along those same lines, we released back in January Queer Finder, which is a in-world themed travel magazine focusing on queer content by queer creators for Pathfinder. But the team is currently in the process of releasing future issues of that, but also looking at branching out into D&D and Starfinder as well, and maybe OGL content as well. And so, yeah, we're still trying to work things out, but as soon as we do, we'll probably open it back up for like, anyone who we really want to encourage bringing up kind of new voices in the industry from underrepresented demographics as well. I think that Uncaged did an amazing job of doing that in the first 4 volumes and this one. Launched a lot of folks, and so we want to give back to the community the opportunities that we had as well. So if you or anyone is interested in that sort of thing as well, feel free to reach out to us. We're also happy to just kind of give general advice on what we've learned in the industry so far. Not definitive by any means, as you can probably tell from my answers here, but we'll do our best.
On a very different note, real quick, if you all haven't been to the BIPOC Lounge or the LGBTQ area too, please do it. It's great. There is a BIPOC networking thing tonight. In case some of y'all that are in that crowd didn't go there, you should. It's great. And I think there's also some stuff going on for the queer community here as well. I know that GenCon's been like starting to push that. It's been great. So yeah.
Just to let you know that my art is also in the BIPOC launch, so go ahead.
But Elaine, what do you have coming up?
Yeah, so I just remember what I was going to say. Do I have time to say that? So I'm not sure how many of you are like interested in like the project management side, but like for what Gwen and David did for us, which was they gave us artists a survey of like what we liked, what we didn't like, what goddesses we had to choose, and that was actually really, really useful because it gave us like so much freedom in order to like say what we wanted to do and where our passion lay. Where my graphic design is my passion. So if not for that, I mean, like I think it's really by the strength of that kind of project management, by kind of tailoring artists to match with the artist's brief, well, the writer's brief of each goddess, that it really shows like it really shows in the strength of all the art, and that's the reason why we are nominated for an Annie.
Yeah, they did a fantastic job, project management, just straight up.
Also, everyone else and the artists and stuff.
Yeah, so yeah, for a project management side, I'm sure that it probably took a lot of work for David and Gwen to kind of do that kind of admin work, but it definitely like shows, and it's absolutely like a pleasure to like work with that kind of thoughtfulness and care. Yeah, so about me. I am at the art show, Table 76. I do have Levitar prints up for sale if you guys want to just take a look or check it out. What am I working on? I have a lot of redacted commissions, as usual, like everyone else does. And yeah, basically it's just redacted. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
We are at time, so we are going to do a quick where everybody can find you shout out, and then we can be found outside. So I've been moderating. I'm Jessica Marcrum. You can find me on Twitter at MissJess_, what, I don't even know her name. Miss_Jess03 on Twitter. Gwen.
I'm Gwen Bassett. You can find me on Twitter at GwenDB. And shout out to literally everyone who worked on this book. I was hamming up the ego for jokes, but I was not the person who made this happen. The other 69 nice people who worked on it are. So thank you all so much.
I'm Elaine Ho. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at artofelainho.com. Art of Elaine Ho. Yeah, sorry.
Grady Wang, you can find at Gallant Goblin on Twitter, The Gallant Goblin pretty much everywhere else.
It's Twitter, DM_GMC, and I'll be streaming soon now that my studio is set up. So, yes.
Thanks, everybody,
Thank
for
you.
coming. Have a great con.
Yeah.